Lesson 11 is on percents, although the written practice doesn't refer a lot back to this lesson. So lesson 11's written practice is really a lot of review. So the first one comes from lesson 4, equal groups. There are 1,000 envelopes in unopened boxes in the office closet. If one box holds 250 envelopes, how many boxes of envelopes are in the office closet? So, like I said, this is about equal groups. And when you have equal groups, you have the number of groups, which we're not sure of, the number of boxes in this case, times the number in each group, and in this case that's the number of envelopes in each box, 250, equals the total number, which in this case is 1,000. So to figure this out, if you are looking for a factor, which is one of the numbers being multiplied, you take the product, which is 1,000, and divide it by the factor that you know, 250. Well, 250 goes into 1,000 4 times, so there are 4 boxes. A dump truck delivered 4 cubic yards of sand for the playground. The sand weighed 5 tons and 800 pounds. How many pounds of sand were delivered? So this 4 cubic yards can throw you off. It really has no bearing on the question asked right now. What they're asking us to do is convert 5 tons into pounds. And what you need to know for that is that 2,000 pounds equals 1 ton. So you can have over 1 ton, or you could have 1 ton over 2,000 pounds, depending on what you're doing. So we're going to have 5 tons over 1. Since tons are on top here, we're going to choose the one of the fractions that has tons on the bottom, so it cancels. So then I'd have 2,000 pounds per 1 ton. Tons are diagonal, so they cancel. And then the 5 and the 200 are both on top, so I would multiply them. And 2,000, excuse me, 5 times 2,000. Well, 5 times 2 is 10, and then 2,000 has 3 zeros, so 10,000 pounds are in the 5 tons. And then it's an additional 800 pounds. So I would say 10,000 pounds plus 800 pounds equals 10,800 pounds. The height of the rose bushes in the garden are 98 centimeters, 97 centimeters, 100 centimeters, 109 centimeters, and 101 centimeters. What is the average height of the rose bushes in the garden? So when you're finding the average, they are talking about the mean. So you add up all the numbers. So 98 plus 97 plus 100 plus 109 plus 101. And when you add all of those up, you get 505. And then once you've added them up, you divide by how many there are. So you take that 505 and you divide by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And 500 divided by 5 is 100. And then 5 divided by 5 is 1. So 101 centimeters is the average height of the rose bush, of a rose bush in that garden. Identify the plot, write an equation, and solve the problem. Tucker purchased comic books. He paid with a $10 bill and received $3.25 in change. What was the cost of the comic books? So the first thing that we need to do is identify the plot. And in this plot, we're talking about starting with some going away, and then having what's left. So that's a separating plot. And in separating plots, the equation that you have is your starting amount which in this case was $10, minus the amount that went away equals what's left, which is $3.25. So to figure this out, I would take $10 minus $3.25, and my solution then well, $3.25 plus 75 cents gets me up to $4. And then $4 plus $6 gets me up to $10. So the comic books cost $6.75. Number 5 says using prime factorization, reduce 60 and 72. So prime factorization was what we learned in section 9. So I'm going to use a tree for each of those. So I'm going to have 60, and two numbers that multiply to give me 60 are 10 and 6. And then two numbers that multiply to give me 10 are 5 and 2. Those are both prime. And two numbers that multiply to give me 6 are 2 and 3, and those are both prime. I'm going to do the same thing with 72. Two numbers that multiply to give me 72 are 8 and 9. Two numbers that multiply to give me 8 are 4 and 2. Two numbers that multiply to give me 9 are 3 and 3. And 4 is the only one that's not prime, and 4 is 2 and 2. And then these ones just get carried down. So 72, the prime factorization, is 2 times 2 times 2 times 3 times 3. 60, the prime factorization, is 5 times 2 times 2 times 3. So when it asks us to reduce that fraction, what we do is we're going to write them on top of each other, those prime factorizations. So 60, we're going to write as 2 times 2 times 3 times 5. 72, we're going to write as 2 times 2 times 2 times 3 times 3. Anytime that we have common between the top and the bottom, we're going to cross them out. So I have a 2 here and a 2 here. I have another 2 here and another 2 here. And then I have a 3 and a 3 here. So what's left on the top is 5. And what's left on the bottom is 2 times 3. So 5 over 2 times 3 is 6. So the reduced fraction is 5/6. In number 6, it says complete the equivalent fraction. Show the multiplication. Well, when you see a problem like this, the first thing that you ask yourself is how do you go from 3 to 18 by either multiplying or dividing. And to go from 3 to 18, you multiply by 6. So what you do is you have the fraction 2/3, and you multiply it by the fraction 6 over 6, because 6 over 6 is 1. Anytime you multiply by 1, you're not changing it at all. So 2 times 6 is 12, and 3 times 6 is 18. So the box filled in here is 12. And that leads us into our next problem that asks, what property of multiplication is used to find equivalent fractions? Well, they're referring to this right here. We're multiplying by 1, so we're not changing the fraction at all, and that's called the multiplicative identity. And that says that anytime you multiply a number by 1, you get that same number back. Alright, number 8 says find the perimeter of the figure. Well, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out what these two sides are here. So I'm going to drop this down. Well, if this section is 4, because this one up here is 4, then this section over here is 12 minus 4, so this is 8, which means this is 8 centimeters up here. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. So if this section right here is 7 centimeters, then this section here is 10 minus 7, or 3 centimeters. So 3 centimeters and 7 centimeters makes up the whole 10 centimeters. So this over here is 3 centimeters. So I'll just clean this up a little bit. You can leave the work, I just want to make sure you're not getting confused. So now if I'm going to find the perimeter, I add up all the sides. So 7 plus 8 plus 3 plus 4 plus 10 plus 12. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So equals, let's see, 7 and 8 is 15, and 7 is 22, and 10 is 32, and 12 is 44. So the perimeter is 44, and we look at the units that are on the measurements, and that's the units for perimeter. Number 9 says, what is the area of the figure? Well, for area, we need to find rectangles, because that's what we know how to find the that's what we know how to find the area of. So I'm going to have a rectangle that's 4 by 10. Well, 4 times 10 equals 40. And I'm going to have a rectangle that's 8 by 7. 8 times 7 equals 56. So the total area is the sum of those. So 56 plus 40 is 96. And again, we're going to look at the units. They're centimeters, but area's units are the units squared. Number 10 says, if each side of a square classroom is 25 feet. So just a little picture off to the side here. We have a square. So this is 25 feet, and this is 25 feet. Then what is the perimeter of the room? Well, I have 4 sides that are all 25 feet. So 4 times 25 equals 100 feet. Okay, then it says, what is the area of the floor of the room? Well, area I do by multiplying. So I'm going to do 25 times the other side, 25, which is 625. The units are feet, and areas are squared of whatever units you have. Jim rode his bike for 4 hours at 16 miles per hour. How far did Jim ride in 2 hours, 3 hours, and 4 hours? Well, in 2 hours, if I would multiply it by 16, every hour he's going 16, so in 2 hours he's going to go 32 miles. In 3 hours, it's going to be 3 times 16, or 48 miles. And then in 4 hours, it'll be 4 times 16, which is 64 miles. Steph was paid $50 for 4 hours of work. What was her rate of pay in dollars per hour? Remember in math, the per means divided. So you're going to take the dollars and divide it by the hours, 4. 50 divided by 4, well, 48 divided by 4 would give me 12. And then I have $2 divided by 4 would give me 50 cents. So she's making $12.50 per hour. The other way that you could write that would be $12.50 with the fraction side. Fraction sign represents division, so $12.50 per hour. Of the 150 people surveyed, 7/10 said they owned at least one pet. How many of the people surveyed owned pets? So 7/10 of 150 means you're going to multiply 150 by 7/10. And when you multiply by a fraction, you multiply by the numerator and divide by the denominator. So 150 divided by 10 is 15, and then 15 times 7, over here, is 35. 7 times 1 plus 3 is 105. So 105 people own a pet. Find the perimeter of a triangle if each side is 9 centimeters. So it's an equilateral triangle. We have 9 centimeters, 9 centimeters, and 9 centimeters. So 9 plus 9 plus 9, we add when we're finding the perimeter, is 27 centimeters. Compare. Well, the absolute value of -4 is 4, and +4 is greater than -3. In letter B, I want to think about these in terms of percents, since this section is about percents. And we talked in class that 4/5 is one that you should just know. 4/5 is 80%. 7/10 is also one that you should just know. 7/10 is 70%. So which is bigger? 80%. Find the missing number and name the property illustrated. 7 plus 2 is the same thing as 2 plus 7. That is the commutative property of addition. Okay, then the next one is 13 times 200 is the same thing as 200 times 13, and that's another commutative property, this time of multiplication. And the last one, 5 plus in parentheses 4 plus 7, and then it shifts the parentheses over, is the same thing as 5 plus 4 in parentheses plus 7. And the associative property is the one that says that you can move the parentheses around when you're either adding or multiplying. This one is the associative property of addition, since we're talking about addition. What two equivalent fractions are illustrated by the shaded circles? Well, this fraction here, 3 of the 4 are shaded, and this fraction here, 9 of the 12 are shaded. So what it's telling you is that 3/4 equals 9/12. What is the difference between the product? So we're going to have something here and something here. That's what it says by what is the difference between the product of 20 and 2. Well, product means multiply those two. And then the difference of 20 and 2. So the product of 20 and 2 is 40. The difference of 20 and 2 is 18. And then the difference of those two things is 22. If 3 is a factor and 21 is a product, then what is the other factor? So we have 3 times another factor is equal to 21. Well, then we would know that 21 divided by 3 equals that factor, which is 7. Rearrange factors to make the calculations easier, and simplify. Justify your steps. So the first thing I see when I look at this is if I multiply 8 by 5, I'm going to get something that ends in a 0. And it's always easier to multiply by something that ends in a 0. So I would like the 8 and the 5 to be next to each other. So the first thing I'm going to do is switch the spots of the 5 and the 7. And that's the commutative property that allows me to do that. And that says that the order does not matter. The next thing I'm going to do is put parentheses around the 8 and the 5 so that I am able to do those first. And that's the associative property, which says the way that you group things doesn't matter. Then I'm going to multiply. 8 times 5 is 40. And then 40 times 7 is just 4 times 7, which is 28, with a 0 at the end. For problems 23 through 25, choose all the correct answers from the list. The number 22 23rds is a member of which of these sets? Well, it's not a whole number. Integers are positive and negative whole numbers. Counting numbers are whole numbers, so the only one that it is a rational number. Rational numbers are those that when you divide them, they don't repeat. They're a terminating decimal is what they're called. Negative 5 is a member of which set of numbers? Well, the only ones that include negative numbers are C, integers, and then it's also a rational number since it ends. So C and D. Counting numbers and whole numbers are only positive and whole numbers. So they don't include negative 5. 0 is a member of which of these sets? Well, whole numbers include 0. Counting numbers do not. You start at 1 for counting numbers. Integers include 0, because they're the positive, negative, and 0. And then 0 is also a rational number. All right, then in number 26, it says list all the prime numbers between 50 and 70. So what I've done is I went and just wrote out every number between 50 and 70, and I'm just going to cross out the ones that I know are not prime. So the easiest one is anything that's even is going to be divisible by 2. So I'm going to cross those ones out. So 50 is divisible by 2, 52, 54, 56, 58, 60, 62, 64, 66, 68, and 70. All those are even, and so they're divisible by 2, which means they're not prime. The next one that's pretty easy is anything that ends in a 5 or a 0 is divisible by 5. So 55 and 65 go away. And the next one that I'm going to check is if it's divisible by 3. And it's going to be divisible by 3 if I can divide, or if when I add the two numbers, that number is divisible by 3. So 5 plus 1 is 6. 6 is divisible by 3. So 51 is not prime. 5 plus 3 is 8. 8 is not divisible by 3. 5 plus 7 is 12. 12 is divisible by 3, so 57 is not prime. 5 plus 9 is 14. 14 is not divisible by 3. 6 plus 1 is 7. 7 is not divisible by 3. 6 plus 3 is 9. 9 is divisible by 3, so 63 is not prime. 6 plus 7 is 13. That's not divisible by 3. And then 6 plus 9 is 15. 15 is divisible by 3, so 69 is not prime. So that leaves us with 53, 59, 61, and 67. Use a factor tree to find the prime factors of 81, then write the prime factorization of 81. I'm going to give myself just a little more space over here. So 81, factor tree for that. 9 times 9 is 81. Factors of 9 are 3 and 3, 3 and 3. So the prime factorization for 81 is 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. All right, if I'm going to do division by primes to find the factors of 80, then I start with 80, and I'm going to divide by a prime number. I'm going to divide by 5, because I know that's going to go into something that ends in a 0. So 5 goes into 8 once. 1 times 5 is 5. 8 minus 5 is 3. Bring the 0 down is 30. 5 goes into 30 6 times. 6 times 5 is 30. All right, so I've done something right. Then I take that 16 and I divide it by another prime number. I'm going to divide by 2. 16 divided by 2 is 8. I'm going to divide that by 2 again. 8 divided by 2 is 4. And I'm going to divide that one more time. 4 divided by 2 is 2. So here is my prime factorization. 80 equals 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 5. 2 times 2 is 4, and 4 times 2 is 8, and 2 times 5 is 10. 10 times 8 is 80. All right. 9,450 divided by 30. Well, 30 goes into 9, it can't. 30 goes into 94 3 times. 3 times 30 is 90. 94 minus 90 is 4. Bring the 5 down. 30 goes into 45 once. 1 times 30 is 30. 45 minus 30 is 15. Bring the 0 down, 150. 30 goes into 150 5 times. 5 times 30 is 150. So there's no remainder. All right, 100 minus 6986. So I'm going to borrow. So I'm going to borrow this 1 and turn this into 10. And then I'm going to turn that into a 9 and make this a 10. Then I'm going to turn that into a 9 and make this a 10. Turn that into a 9 and make this a 10. 10 minus 6 is 4. 9 minus 8 is 1. 9 minus 9 is 0. 9 minus 6 is 3. So $30.14. And then the last one, 3/4 of 48 means 48 times 3/4, which is 48 times 3 divided by 4. Well, 48 divided by 4 is 12, and 12 times 3 is 36.